Um, I have done a lot of research in terms of going back 100 years, going back 150 years. How did people become doctors? How did people become lawyers? You know, we had this huge growing nation back during the turn of the century. Still, people were coming to America. And what I discovered was if you want to be a lawyer, you could go and be an apprentice or just work inside the lawyer's office.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawyer would, give you certain things to do, and he would keep a record of that. And then when it came time for you to get approved to take the bar and become a lawyer, you did it. You didn't have to go to any specific college or university or be associated with that in any way. I also learned that was the same for a long time for people who wanted to be dentists or people who wanted to be in other trades and even trades that were going to require you to get licensed or professions that were going to require you to have other types of certification.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have that. We don't have that right now. We don't have that anymore. However, I think that the universities are kind of taking a page out of that. Pay massive amounts of money to get their degrees online. You know, I don't want to mention any names of any universities who are really profiting from this, but a lot of them are in Arizona, or are in that area. That they have these campuses, and more than 50, 60, 70% of their students, are all over the country, all over the world. And they're not doing in-person classes, and they're making tons of money by doing this. Not that I'm not for or against it, but what I'm saying is that you mentioned experience. Experience is number one. Plus, when you're working inside of a professional office, they're typically paying you something because they're utilizing you for a purpose. So you're getting the best of both worlds: experience, real world experience. You're also, when you're working inside of an office, you're also learning how to run a business in that industry. And that's what people graduate from medical school. They graduate from law school, and they go out looking for a job, but they still don't know how to run a business. They can't open up their own firm because they do not know how to run a business. And they don't teach that in any college, how to run your firm, how to run your medical practice, how to do this, how to balance a checkbook. They teach them nothing. They go, look, okay, you are now this. Okay, go out and get them Tiger. And they're like, whoa, they have no idea. And by gaining, you said, you hit it on the head. There's no greater teacher. There's no greater education than hands-on, real life, day-to-day experience. Yeah. And we're in short supply in that right now.
Yeah. When I was in college, we didn't have the opportunities that you have today. If you're interested in, from just a interest standpoint, that's not necessarily for a career. If you're interested in early American history, or you're interested in philosophy, just from an academic perspective, because you're interested in those topics, there's abundant resources out there, podcasts, internet resources to get that type of learning. YouTube is just a fantastic resource if you know what to look for. And I tell people that college should be a business decision. And if I'm interested in a classical education, because I didn't receive that in high school, but I want to have a career in IT or plumbing or whatever, I don't need to go to the college to get a degree in classical studies. I can get that on my own. And so college really needs to be a business decision. And I don't know that there's too many 18-year-olds out there that have enough vision and ambition to really know what they're going to do with that college degree. How many times do college students change majors or see direction. And so I would much rather, hey, get the 2 years at the community college out of the way, work while you're doing that, and explore, try many different industries through a entry level job, and figure out what really interests you and what you're good at and what you're really built to do, and then really focus on getting that degree.
Exactly. I think a lot of parents, especially the boomer generation, just wanted their children. I would hear this all the time. Well, yeah, I want them to go to college just so that they have the college experience. They want it's something about the college experience. And I can understand that, but the college campuses are no longer a real world experience. They have college campuses are with. we could talk on that forever, but you don't get any real world experience at all. Just even socialization, I believe, the way that colleges are structured now, they've got so many rules. You really don't get to, really find yourself these days, because the way that colleges are set up to kind of guide you and tell you what to do, especially in certain. I think there's just one huge social experiment now that's gone awry.
I mean, the college experience these days is an excuse to not grow up.
Exactly.
When you're 40, you don't get to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning and sleep until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and hang out with your friends every night. That's not reality. I had a great college experience. I'm not saying I didn't ever do those things, although I don't think I've ever slept past 8 o'clock in my life. But the college experience isn't life. And is it worth mortgaging your ability to buy a home, to start a family, to start a business? Is it worth mortgaging that for up to 25 years?
Exactly. Well, you could bypass that by just going to a trade and becoming a plumber's assistant for 5 years, and then you would understand everything. I talked earlier before we started that I really wanted to focus in on the for-profit schools. If we were to go back and jump inside of a DeLorean and go back in time to, let's say, back I think they kind of started more or less in the late 70s. They were really dominant as far as marketing the television commercials to the 80s, and I think they started to tone it down as we got into the early 2000s. But we know which colleges we're talking about. The ITT Technical Institute, DeVry. I mean, those commercials would run, all day long during daytime television, and then late at night, and they were marketed heavily towards lower income areas, lower income households, people who thought they would never have the opportunity to go to college. And I recall, a lot of people would back in the 90s would come up and say, "What are you doing?" "I'm going to school." "Oh, what university are you going to?" They tell you, "Oh, I'm going to Barbizon, I'm going to DeVry, I'm going to ITT." I go, "Well, what are you studying?" It was usually some technical thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of them, many of them I know would graduate and they would actually get work. But it appears as though when the student loans just started, the student loan business just continued to grow and grow and grow, that so did these universities. I mean, they were popping up, ones you never heard of were just popping up all over the place. And you get a sense that I understand that like 80, in some cases, 85% of their business was on student loans, a lot of these for-profit schools. Mm-hmm. And that's taxpayer money. That's taxpayer dollars. And now, recently, the Biden administration has started to forgive some of these for-profit loans for a number of different reasons, as you're aware. um, uh, if the whole thing was just an experiment gone bad, you know, where do we see things going from here with the for-profit school industry and
Yeah.
benefiting from student loans?
Well, you know, it was certainly easy money for these for-profit schools to get a hold of, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit of a conundrum for me, and I'm not really an expert on the issuing of loans, more so the servicing of the loans. But you know, I'm a free market capitalist by design, and so I'm thinking, cool. You know, a for-profit school, they should be able to cut the costs and produce a better product than, say, the University of Michigan or UCI or whatever, because those are government run. You know, on paper, that seems to be what would be the case. But what we had with a lot of these for-profit schools was just downright fraud, with outright fraud, and you know, I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that the Biden administration is now just starting to forgive some of these loans. When I was a servicer working for the servicer, we were already doing that. If you attended ITT Tech or Corinthian colleges or any of these schools when they closed, we were already doing that. We were already forgiving the loans. Now, we weren't forgiving the loan for the person who attended that school and had loans and wasn't when the school closed. So, you know, whether they stopped going or they had graduated, those loans weren't being forgiven. But, you know, and I think that they're starting to revamp some of those forgiveness programs, but to act like this is a brand new idea by the Biden administration is complete hogwash.
It is a, well, not entirely. It can suit you politically during a political season. What do you see any broad solutions that would probably best take care of the student loan crisis that we have right now, but for the long term, for the short term, and just overall, what can we change specifically? What can we change about the system? I know it may not be more than just one thing, but what can we change about the system, the way it's set up, so that we don't find ourselves again in this situation, you know, with the next generation. What would you say specifically needs to be looked at and perhaps changed?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a couple things, in my opinion, that could be done. And I'm not going to say I'm an expert on these things. These are just some of the things that I've thought of. I think the first thing is that we got to do is we got to allow student loans to be liquidated through bankruptcy. And I'm not a bankruptcy expert by any stretch, but my thinking is that if these loans are going to be liquidated through bankruptcy, that schools might be able to be held a bit more accountable for issuing excess loans. The second thing is that I really think we need to streamline and make these various programs available a bit more understandable. Public service loan forgiveness, because I've dealt with it for so years, I know it like the back of my hand. But when I explain the program to borrowers, I'm really having to piecemeal it and cut it into pieces for people to understand, because it is a very complex program. And instead of having these complex programs, let's make it a bit easier to understand. The reason that people pay me for my student loan consultations is because it's so hard to understand. Yeah. And the servicers in education have done a very bad job of communicating what these requirements are. And so paying me is kind of like paying your tax preparer or your tax planner. You know, you can do your own taxes, you can do your own tax planning, but when the codes are changing, and the IRC code is so large, why would you?
Right.
And student loans are kind of that way as well. And the answer that nobody likes, or not many people like, and I get in trouble with a lot, is the government just has to stop issuing so many student loans willy-nilly. I mean, that's the foolproof method. Now, when you do that, you're going to get a lot of lawsuits and a lot of problems, because you've fed into these schools. And if you stop issuing so many student loans, the universities and the education system is going to be losing a lot of money. But the government, in my estimation, as a free market capitalist, has never been for the purpose of funding an industry. The government doesn't grow anything. They don't build anything, except for maybe roads and the military. But to say that it's the government's role to educate our workforce, I think is insane.
Right.
Right. Well, kind of switching gears to what's coming in the future. So they estimate that 40 million Americans carry student loans right now. So even if he forgave 10,000 maximum, they're estimating that a total of 321 billion of federal student loans would be forgiven. What would that do to inflation, or what could we possibly see coming as far as that's concerned?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. If the government writes off that debt, it's just going to continue to elevate and lengthen the period of time of these high inflationary periods that we find ourselves in. I don't know how anyone could conclude otherwise.
Yeah. I had a thought where the possibility that if we were to just have tell students, if graduates or people who have student loan debt, go work. There are a lot of industries that are looking to find workers. We saw this happen over the course of the pandemic. There was a worker shortage. So listen, go work and if you stay at that business, or you continue working for the next 4 years, because a lot of people are working by choice. You go work, and we'll forgive your student loan debt. You just have to, and we'll make the company that hires you, we'll make them pay. We'll make them pay off your student loan debt. It would be a win-win. Win-win.
I guess another tax point that I'm going to bring up is that we kind of already are doing that. There's a program out there, just like college tuition. Your job can pay your tuition up to $5,250 until 2026. Businesses, and if you don't know this, tax people, this is really good information. Just like a business can pay college tuition, the business can pay up to $5,250 a year of the borrower's student loans, and that's a tax-free benefit to the employee, and it's a tax deduction to the business. That's a good deal. And if your business or your business client is having a lot of tax liability with a strong workforce with people with student loans, that's one of the benefits that your clients can benefit from.
Exactly. And there are a lot of individuals who graduate from law school at the top of their class, graduate from medical school at the top of the class, and might have been in some special area of science or law, who are highly sought after, and they go to these firms or to hospitals, and they go, one of the perks is they get their student loan debt entirely paid off. I mean, right. If there's so much that that more and more companies should, it would be nothing for Jeff Bezos, right, to say, hey, come work at Amazon, stay here for 3-4 years, and I'll pay off your student loan debt. That'd be nothing for him to do it. He probably doesn't want to do it, but it would be, these billionaires are always trying to, shine their light. It's something that they should offer.
Some sort of benefit like the one that I just discussed is necessary, but to just say, hey, I'm going to pay off your student loan debt for anyone in its totality. What are you going to do with my resident physician client who has $450,000 of student loans versus my client who has 30,000? The corporations, the Amazon has a fiduciary responsibility to their stockholders, and to just pay an enormous amount of student loan debt it's not in line with the mission of that corporation, which is to bring a profit to their shareholders. And so I'm hesitant to just have these willy-nilly programs, but $5,250 max per individual per year to me seems a bit more doable. If you have a corporation, with several $1 million or maybe many millions of dollars of profit, and you have a workforce of 5,000 and 1,000 of them have student loans, that seems a bit more doable than forgiving juniors $450,000 student loans over 4 years.
Right. Exactly.
We're paying for them, really.
Yeah. Well, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree with you, and I see that point. However, there used to be ads that the DoD would run for its different branches saying, "Okay, come serve this amount of time in the armed forces, and you're going to get $20,000 that you can apply to, university." Well, just say, this is kind of in reverse. Okay, you owe $30,000 in student loan debt. Come join the Navy. Do 2 years here, and poof, it's taken care of. Armed forces are having a very difficult time recruiting right now because everybody decide they want to, lay low and have fun, smoking marijuana at college.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the public service loan forgiveness program is there. You can have the military forgive a portion of your loans, and then you can work, for the government or a nonprofit organization after that and count that DoD experience towards your public service loan forgiveness. There are programs out there, but it's incumbent upon the individual borrower to understand what programs are out there and what.
And my next question would be this, okay? The student, especially the for-profit colleges that are hopefully going to die a horrible death. They would their budgets. When you look at their budgets, they would spend 20 to 30, sometimes 35 to 40% of marketing. And they did this for decades. Okay, why aren't we marketing, on television, on ads, explaining to people, hey, there is a way to solve your student loan issues. Because they certainly got marketed the student loans by the big major corporations, to all the big banks. Why don't we have? We should have the banks paying that marketing bill. Saying, listen, this is how your options for getting your student loan debt resolved.
I think the reason is quite simple, Don, because if the colleges are talking about the debt, they're going to scare off their potential students because no one wants to take on debt. They sell their service, their education, by promising a certain type of career with certain type of income, but they don't want to say from the outgo that, hey, you're going to have to take out $80,000 to $120,000 of student loans to pay for the program, because then that's going to scare people away.
Right, exactly. Well, we're running towards the end of the show. I just want to get your final thoughts, unless you had something else specific that you wanted to address. Okay, how do you feel with regards to the student loan crisis and what the Biden administration is going to do? Are student loans going to start? Are they going to be required to start making those payments again sometime before January 2023? Do you think, or are we just going to be kicking the can down the road until 2024, 2025. How do you think this all ends? Give our student loan debtors out there your thoughts and possible predictions, Keith.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but if I had to speculate based upon experience, I would say that people are not going to be required to make payments in September. It's likely to be pushed back until at least 2023. I would guess that they're not wanting to do that because there's calls for the government to extend the limited waiver on the public service loan forgiveness. Fed Loan hasn't finished transferring their accounts to Mohila because Fed Loan is closing its doors. And that's a kind of a good riddance kind of scenario, but I'm not always so sure that the alternative is better. But so I think for those reasons that we're likely to see the payment suspension and interest rate suspension to be extended again. I do think that there is going to be some type of forgiveness. They seem to be pushing pretty hard on that. Who's going to qualify and what the process is going to be for that, whether it's going to be some sort of application. And the complexity of that, I think, is going to be a bit more challenging than most people think. I don't think that the government is just going to magically wipe away $10,000 of debt from everybody who qualifies. I think it's going to be. I'm not at all convinced that this is going to be at all a smooth situation, and I think it's just going to create more headaches and more problems. Yeah. I wish I had better news. And I mean, I could talk about this for hours on the efficiency of this and whether or not it should be done at all. And I could sit here and be the talking head and try to fix the program. Most people who don't have my values aren't going to like my ideas, even though I tend to think I'm right. So I'm not at all confident that this is going to go over well or smoothly.
Exactly.
Agreed. Yeah.
Well, listen, on that, I've got one last question for you, Keith, before we close everything here. Let's say we're living in a world, sometime in 2023, and all student loan debt, no matter what your income, your demographic, all student loan debt, like that, the stroke of a pen, is forgiven. It's forgiven completely for everyone who has, whether it's $5,000 or $500,000, it's all forgiven. What do you think would happen? Do you think that the system would just continue the same way as it had before? Or from I'm talking from a collective or even down to the individual level, what would most people do? What would be the response, and what would the industry do? What would colleges and universities do if just all student loan debt to the stroke of a pen was just instantly forgiven? What do you think the outcome from that would be?
It's so unlikely to happen that every single penny would be forgiven. I hate to speculate on something that is so unlikely, but it would just devastate our country with inflation, I believe, and quite frankly, about the borrowers who paid off their student loans and how fair it is. About the future borrowers, are they just going to stop issuing student loans altogether? Is education going to be free now? And so we forgive, a couple $1 billion worth of student loans, and now we're all of a sudden either having new loans being issued, and how is that fair? Or are we just going to socialize education and make it free for everyone? And what is that going to continue to do to the cost of inflation, the cost of the dollar and inflation? I mean, the reason that Biden has only really said $10,000 and not $50,000 is because I think that his advisors know how forgiving more than that would be devastating.
Wow.
So much for the Inflation Reduction Act, huh?
Yeah. I believe that half of student loan borrowers, what is it, like 40,000, you said? 40 million, 40 million?
Yeah.
I believe that half of them, if they had their student loan debt,
40 million.
canceled, complete and into, forever. Then half of them would just go back to college.
100%.
Well, that's the other thing. And I mean, and if you qualify, you could have a payment as low as $0. It's a payment. It's income-driven repayment. It is a payment of $0, but it is a payment.
Yeah.
And if you're low income, you can qualify for that. And after 20 to 25 years of making those $0 payments, you could have loans forgiven. That is a program that's out there.
Wow.
So, that whether that's a good program or not can be debated elsewhere, but that is an option out there rather than just, throwing in the towel on a couple $1 billion of loans. That would be a better route to go. We just got to make it a bit more efficient.
So it sounds a lot like a program the IRS has.
Yes.
Called currently non-collectible, CNC status, and we apply that program to a lot of our clients and for tax resolution. So we say, look, the debt's eventually going to expire. Let's just put you in this program because you don't have the income, the assets, or anything to pay this back, and and we can give them the exact date, month, day, and year that it's going to expire, and they just can't believe it. They go, "Yeah, that's going to eventually expire." So I wasn't aware that there was such a thing with student loans. Apparently, obviously, Nicole is because she's paying that $0. It's like, I know that this is offer this is currently non-collectible status. I know how to play this game.
No, I'm just gonna keep going to school for the rest of my life.
That's another scary thing too. Not in your case. That's probably a good idea. Okay. Well, Keith, listen, we want to thank you so much for coming back. Love to have you back again as the student loan crisis drama continues to unfold. I'm sure we're going to get some exciting things happening in the area before the end of the year. Please, if you could, tell our audience how they might be able to get a hold of you, reach out to you, our tax professionals, and any taxpayers that might be watching on how they can reach out to you to get more information or see how you can assist them with their finances and other things.
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can just look me up as Keith Conley on LinkedIn. My email is kconley, CONLEY at onesco.net. You're welcome to reach out to me there, and I'd be happy to help you or any of your clients get a handle on their student loans. But I also do full service financial planning and investment management and life and disability and long-term care insurance. And happy to talk with anyone on any of those matters.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Keith. We're going to put a link to Keith's LinkedIn down in the below the comment box and the description box. So if you didn't get that information, just look in the description box for Keith's info, and hopefully it'll take you directly to his LinkedIn page. And hopefully, if you are on LinkedIn, you can connect with him. Be sure and share this video with anyone might be dealing with a student loan debt situation in their household or potentially coming up. And please, we're trying to grow out this channel. It helps to subscribe. We're slowly growing, and it can never happen too fast. So